What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's a good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here. Aaron Glenn has about as unenviable a task as any man walking earth when it comes to finding a way to revitalize and bring some consistent success back to this New York Jets franchise. And it doesn't get any easier when you have Woody Johnson tying his hopes to Aaron Glenn, when you have all of the outside commentary from people like Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson, all the former players that have come to his aid, as well as former coaches that are speaking out, that are saying that, if he can't make it work, nobody else will be able to figure it out for the Jets. And it is a lot of pressure, and Aaron Glenn is built for this, as he mentioned in his introductory press conference. But I do think it's worth being able to touch on any comments that come up from those that have worked closest to him. And we did get some insights from new Chicago Bears head coach Ben Johnson, who was the offensive coordinator with Aaron Glenn during the tenure with the Detroit Lions. So it helps to know what he's thinking. But not only do we get a little bit of insider information, if you will, from the perspective of what we can get out of Aaron Glenn, he also touches on Tanner Engstrand here. And so there's already going to be that kind of energy that we're waiting to see, and the news pouring out from the offseason activities. And luckily enough for us, our OTAs and stuff gets to start a little bit early. In fact, they're already underway, even though the first 2 weeks are only going to be strength and conditioning. But I can't wait to see the news start pouring in from the practice field. What does it look like we're running? Are we more pass-oriented, run-oriented? What is it going to look like getting Justin Fields up to speed for this offense? And how is everybody adjusting, right? Big question marks with Aaron Glenn being the first-time head coach. Big question marks with Tanner Engstrand being the first-time OC. I mean, we've already seen this story before with Robert Saleh and LaFleur. So new regime, we'll see how this pans out. But let's get into some of the quotes here. So Ben Johnson said he's so unique in terms of a communicator, and this is in regards to Aaron Glenn. He's got such a wealth of experience because obviously high-level player when he played, has the coaching aspect down pat, but also has the the scouting aspect of it down as well, because it's very rare that you see the trifecta like that come together. He does all three at a high level. He communicates the standard. The players will love him, and yet they'll know they're getting pushed and challenged every step of the way as well. So it's been fun to see the staff that he's put together. I think he's done a great job. I know Steve Wilkes was going to be one of the guys there on defense that he trusted. And then obviously I know Tanner really well, and I think the world of Tanner. So when you kind of break this down into its parts, you get the highlights of everything that's already been mentioned about Aaron Glenn prior to becoming the head coach for us, right? Spent his time in scouting, and even AG himself, he's touched on the fact that at every pivotal part of his career, he's been a part of the New York Jets as a player. When it went to scouting, when it went to getting front office work down, and then now coming back into the coaching ranks. So obviously there's a ton of passion for AG him in and of itself here. But you talk about the scouting background, and I don't think people are placing enough value on that, right? When you look at how things have been presented to us so far, Aaron Glenn is 100% the face of the franchise for this new kind of revisioning of the team, right? And normally you can make the case that maybe the GM should be that guy, and how power structures are set up, etc. But Aaron Glenn is the face, for better or for worse. I personally think it's better, but you also get kind of a mini GM, right? You kind of get a mini scout and evaluator all wrapped up into this one package. And so there's not even, I think what this does is there's not clean divides, and maybe you can argue that that's exactly what you want, but you can't specifically look at Darren Muji and say, all right, well, he sucks as a talent evaluator. Look at his draft picks. This is where we're going wrong, etc., etc. Aaron Glenn's already mentioned and announced he's going to have his fingerprints on every aspect of this organization. And so when it comes to putting together big boards, when it comes to evaluating these guys, especially on the defensive side of the ball, even though he's mentioned that he's kind of a neutral coach, right? He's looking at special teams, he's looking at defense, he's looking at offense. Your expertise is going to be on the defensive side of the ball. So that's just what I focus on here. But you kind of get this blend now where you have to put the blames on both parties, right? You can't, I was going to say squarely, you can't specifically assign blame to Darren Muji per se, unless you think that Aaron Glenn is sitting in these draft meetings and he's taking a step back when it comes to what Darren Muji's thought process is for these players versus what Aaron Glenn is seeing, how he's bouncing those ideas based off what Darren Muji is seeing, who also is widely regarded as a very effective talent evaluator. And ultimately, if roster decisions are going to land with Aaron Glenn, I would imagine that he's going to be the final decision maker on who those draft picks are going to be. And so either way, you can say that all of that's on the back burner, right? Who cares? Let's just make sure that we get the right people. But I do find that to be kind of a fascinating idea that I want to see roll out as we get a couple draft classes under both of these gentlemen, because who knows? Aaron Glenn could be a stud when it comes to evaluating these guys and knowing exactly what he wants. And one of the things that I will be specifically looking for is when it comes to that New York grit or that New Jersey grit that we've heard AG talk about, right? There's a certain demeanor, a certain attitude that you definitely have to have about you if you want to play. And it's just part of being in the city, part of the weather conditions that are there, part of playing the stadium. And as not too many people would know better than Aaron Glenn, what it means to truly be a New York Jet and, wear that uniform with pride and success. Everything else here, I think we've pretty much hammered home, right, between all of the details that are rolled out, what Aaron Glenn's already presented to us. I do love the fact that he highlights that players are going to know the standard, and there's not going to be any of this coddling, right? With Robert Saleh, as much as I appreciated the fact that he gave his coaching staff a chance to work with these guys that maybe needed 2 or 3 years before they really turned into strong contributors, everything in between really was kind of like that compliment sandwich kind of mentality, which I hate. Let's give him something good. Let's barely say something that's, opportunistic for this guy, and then let's finish it off with praise once again. And of course, all of the praise to the opponents whenever we ended up taking all of the losses that we had. I'm hoping that's a thing of the past when it comes to Aaron Glenn and what we get out of his press conferences. But even more so, I think this gives someone like Garrett Wilson, right, one of the more passionate players on the team as a whole, but definitely on the offense, a little bit more ammo when it comes to holding this staff accountable, but also based on what his commentary would be, and really anybody that decides to speak up to the media as we've seen in the past, this will give you some insight into how different is this coaching staff treating the players versus what we saw under Robert Saleh and even Todd Bowles and all of the previous regimes, right? Aaron Glenn seems like a guy that effectively fills that kind of father figure role, regardless of if people are missing that in their life or whatever the case is. He's going to give you a credo, right? And I mean credo in the sense of, here is how we are going to go about things in life, in practice, game day, etc. Right? This is kind of that preparation meets opportunity type situation, and you end up getting the perfect chance to go out there and display and execute exactly what you've been getting done. So I'm highly looking forward to how these players are going to respond to them. But more interestingly, we got Ben's thoughts here on Tanner Engstrand. He said he was an integral part of what we are doing there. I got to know him. It was before Dan even took the job there in Detroit. I think Tanner came on as a quality control coach there the last year of Patricia, and he had a similar trajectory as I did. He just kind of climbed the ladder the same way, starting low and then tight end position, and then a passing game coordinator. He and I have a shared experience, a shared bond that way. I leaned heavily into him the last 2 seasons, We had Johnny Morton, who is now in Detroit as a coordinator, the first year that I was calling it, and Tanner was the tight ends coach. And we ended up moving him to the passing game coordinator, effectively taking over for Johnny Morton, and he is completely ready for this next challenge. He's called plays in his past, and so I think each and every game when I was calling it, he was doing the same thing in his head. So there's not a ton of certainties, right? And if anything, I think this is just kind of an overall nicety in terms of this first part. We know the passing game coordinator is one that can get swept under the rug, but it's not a role that's taken lightly, right? You give all of the credit and all of the failures to the OC when it comes to an effective offense being out there on the field, but the when you look at it, right, I don't want to keep going back to like the corporate ladder spectrum of things, but in general, when you have a hierarchy, because this is going to occur no matter what, the guy at the top, if you're running the perfect kind of scheme or business, let's call it a plan here, business plan. The guy at the top is the guy that has the high level mentality thinking, right? He's overviewing everything. He's looking for efficiency. He's looking for enhancements, or she will leave the politics out of it, right? But said individual is looking at things from that 30,000 foot view, and they're saying, here's all of the immediate things that stick out to me, good and or bad, and here's future state that I'm looking at and the plan to get there. Everybody, as you start going down this ladder, these guys get into the minutia, if you will, of being subject matter experts, being process flow experts, if you will. These are the people that either from a longevity standpoint or just really being in tune with that specific subject. These are the guys that know all the nooks and crannies, right? The X's and O's, how to piece things together. So being a passing game coordinator is really kind of the next best thing to being an OC, as opposed to having a guy that's a position coach, for example, and then trying to move him up to an OC, because as the passing game coordinator, you are drafting up. Here's what I am seeing, and there's some change in responsibilities, right? Sometimes these guys are responsible for breaking down the film, and that's how they're putting their passing attacks together. Other times that's coming to them and they're working based off whatever was provided. But in general terms, these guys are pivotal in terms of being able to put together the game plan, making sure it makes sense, how it flows, being able to adjust based on whatever is working and not working. And they are coordinating that with the team, right? And they're looking at the talent that they have at their disposal and saying, this works perfectly based on what we have, or, I need to put this play on the back burner because we don't quite have these skill sets in place just yet. And they're also thinking about, from a development standpoint, here's where we can take our opportunities, giving a little bit of work to some of these guys and seeing if they're progressing based on what we're doing in practice. So, to hear that, again, this isn't a guy that just got plucked out of being Detroit's offense just because he was part of the coaching staff, and more so that he was a very integral piece, is huge. He goes on to mention he's very similar to AG. He is an excellent communicator. He'll do a great job in front of the room with the players. I think where Tanner is really going to excel is he's been able to really thrive in these game management spots. So he understands the situation in the game. What do we need yardage wise to get into field possession, whether it's a field goal or an attempt to score a touchdown. So he's very advanced in that area. Quick thinker, and like I said, huge impact on our process over the past couple of years. You also have to keep in mind, right, the continuous evolution of an offense, right? As they're seeing what counters defenses are putting in play and being able to work off of that while still being able to keep plays installed that they know are working at a high level or a high percentage is huge. It means everything, right? And Detroit, one of the core issues under Robert Saleh was that their game management was piss poor and their football situational awareness was piss poor. The Detroit Lions were pretty much the antithesis to that, right? Not only were they able to perform in the clutch, they were able to dominate teams from the beginning when necessary, right? You look at a lot of the scripts that we ran versus scripts that Detroit would have ran, right? First 15 plays or so, that's pretty common. They had a much more effective time being able to go out there and get things working. And it also, I bring it up because it's always noteworthy. Jared Goff was a revitalization project, right? So having Justin Fields isn't going to be anything new. And in fact, it's probably even better because Jared Goff is more so of the throwback pocket passer as opposed to being a guy that's mobile, even though he's able to go out there and do some things outside of the structure of the offense. But this is everything I would imagine that Tanner Engstrand could have hoped for when it comes to familiarity, as well as being able to get a player that brings everything that he would have wanted to the table. Going forward, you probably don't know exactly what it's going to look like until you hit the grass here this springtime. And even then, whatever you see this springtime is going to morph and evolve in training camp and going into the season as well. That's just his comments as it relates to what the offense could potentially look like. Obviously, Ben Johnson's working with Caleb Williams now. Tanner Engstrand will be working with Justin Fields. Much different quarterbacks than what either would have been accustomed to with Jared Goff. But we'll see how that continues to impact, right? Final comments here. So I think Tanner understands there's a progression in terms of how it needs to be installed, and the foundation is going to be put in place this spring and be able to go whatever direction is necessary, particularly with a different style of quarterback in New York than what we had in Detroit. It's going to be fun for me to watch him from afar. How is he going to be able to tackle that? Because that's a similar challenge with what I have as well, with its a different style of quarterback. So a lot of different ways that the offense we had in Detroit can evolve. I talked about this a little bit. I don't see us exactly trying to replicate and just make a couple changes from what they did in Detroit. If anything, the way that we're set up and depending on how we draft, this could be a strong indicator as well. But we're definitely set up to kind of be a mix of Detroit Lions, because obviously there's going to be some base foundation there. But again, looking at Tanner Engstrand at San Diego State, who was he under? Harbaugh. What has Harbaugh's offense been about? It's been about the tight end position. It's been about the running game, dominant offensive line, and a quarterback that generally can play that highly effective game manager role up into what we've seen under Lamar Jackson, right? But Joe Flacco is pretty much the mold for what they've had previously. So we're set up to really implement what the Ravens are capable of pulling off, while having strong elements of the Detroit Lions offense. And then I would imagine you'll see, West Coast principles and stuff from like timing-based offenses, the Miami Dolphins, when you want to talk about offense that have a ton of speed. 49ers, of course, is just being that staple with Shanahan over there. So nonetheless, nothing eye-opening, but I always love whatever minute or additional details we can get when it comes to looking at our coaching staff until we can actually get to see these guys on game day. So let me know what you guys think about the comments, or if you found any other gems, comments, anything that adds or takes away from this coaching staff as well. And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.